And welcome back to our live coverage of the Mackinac Policy Conference. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining us as we get started here today and the first real day of programming. I want you to go ahead and take a look, if you can see in the larger view behind me. We're in the parlor of the Grand Hotel, and it's very crowded. Anika Goss is with me. She's the CEO of Detroit Future City, and it's a lively crowd already here this morning, Anika.
It is a lively crowd.
Yeah, it's looking good. All right, so I'm so glad that you're with me as we kind of kick off all of our coverage here, because one of the main things that people are talking about is investment in the state and getting good jobs. Well, Detroit Future City has done a lot of work and looking at the data and what kind of job availability there is, and specifically looking at the city of Detroit and meeting where our population is, and then maybe getting more training. But you've been concentrating on those middle class, higher wage jobs. So explain to us, I guess, first off, Anika, what is a good job?
Yeah, so we think of a good job as a middle wage job. Mm-hmm. And a middle wage job is a job that maybe starts at around $18 an hour, but it can go up to as high as it can, but it doesn't require more than a high school degree.
Okay.
And 85% of Detroiters do not have a high school diploma. And so the ultimate goal is to increase education attainment for Detroiters so that they can achieve higher wages and can prosper in more professional positions in Detroit. But until we get there, there should be an increase of more middle wage jobs. And these are things like bank tellers, plumbers, in the construction industry, higher level construction workers, higher level tree trimmers, skilled tree trimmers. Those are all considered middle wage jobs. Nurses.
So sometimes you hear people say, well, a low-paying job or a job is better than no job at all. And that's a bit of a shift. You have to shift from that mindset. And talk to me about how deliberate a process it is to have these types of jobs, that companies create these sorts of opportunities, knowing full well that when you get someone that can achieve a higher wage, that totally changes quality of life and living.
Absolutely. I think what we've learned, Christy, is that so many Detroiters are living at such a low income. And part of the reason that's happening is because the only jobs in Detroit that are growing are low-wage jobs. Low-wage jobs that don't really go anywhere. And in the rest of the region, and in the country, middle-wage jobs are actually the jobs that are growing, even post-pandemic, right?
Okay.
So what we're finding is that Detroiters have a much higher cost burden, meaning that they're paying more than a third of their income in housing costs. They're not able to afford transportation to get to some of the higher paying jobs. And their education attainment and skill-based alone is keeping them from some of these professional jobs. So what it does really require is for us to be much more intentional about how we can make these higher wage, middle wage jobs available for Detroiters.
I think what's great about the report that Detroit Future City did is, again, with all of the data that's right there, and you also looked at different areas of the country that are doing it right.
Yes.
And one of the areas was in Grand Rapids, there were some businesses that had training opportunities you're talking about to advance within, which is big. And then also even nonprofits that have wraparound services to be able to help with different kind of training and support. Talk a little bit about some of the examples.
Absolutely. I was really excited to be able, and Mass Economics, our partner, actually did a lot of that benchmarking for us. And we're so fortunate to have an economics firm to be able to do that. And it's really important for us to be able to see, even outside of Detroit, that there are all kinds of partnerships, public and private, nonprofit, for-profit, and philanthropic, that have come together to specifically to create higher wages for their residents. And I think you can see that in Fresno, California, not only was it a partnership to be more inclusive about hiring, but they also tied it directly to the economic development that they wanted to see happen in Fresno, and that made a huge difference. And in Baltimore, they also really focused on who was outside of the workforce. right? So then they could focus on what are the other things that are keeping people from participating in these middle wage jobs. And so we really wanted to give example of different cities so that, because these are things that we can do here in Detroit.
Right. I think it's interesting. We've had a difficult time coming out of the pandemic in these last 2 years, and I know that you've looked at data, and it's like, this was tough even before the pandemic and then coming out. But I think what was interesting is showing, and you mentioned a little bit earlier, about how the middle wage jobs did not drop, but they're still on a growth pattern and there's opportunity. So what is the marching order now? What is the call to action that when you get to talk to business leaders who are filling up this parlor and walking around here over the next 2 days about trying to deliberately create these scenarios for people?
That's right. What I really want people to know, especially job creators, business leaders, is that a single job is just not enough. We have to think about a job that actually has opportunity and that where the wage is high enough to be able to sustain and stabilize that employee. That's actually how you keep employees, and that's actually how you stabilize the economy in general. Region, your investment has to also include the human capital. And paying Detroiters a decent wage, meaning over $18 an hour, with an opportunity for growth, being really intentional about that, is how we begin to do that.
And you talk about $18 an hour, and we are in a state of inflation right now that we have not experienced. And so that even puts you back on your heels, and you think, gosh, we need to bump that number even higher.
Absolutely. If we could get to 32, for the average, but 32 is, pushes everybody back so far. And I think post-pandemic, even, people who jumped out of the workforce, women, I think that where we've lost the most are jobs for women, which is unconscionable. That is the majority of the population that have dropped out of the workforce. So how we hire women, making sure that women can actually work and stabilize, that includes childcare.
I was just going to say, let's talk about the childcare piece. Let's talk about the flexibility piece.
Absolutely.
And when you talk about that room for advancement and growth, and realizing what skills and talents people can bring to the table that might not be in a regular setting, that's what women need in this great reassessment right now that we're all going through, I think.
Absolutely. You have to be able to think about your future, the future of your family. And it's not 1956. You and I are here at the policy conference right now. We are not at home. As much as I love to bake pie and dinner
and
for my family.
Just sit and relax and not do anything at all, right, Anika?
I unfortunately have to work every single day and make sure that both of my kids can go to college and put them through school. And I think there are a lot of women that are also fitting into that category. And if 2/3 of the female adult working population have dropped out of the workforce post-pandemic, not because they didn't want to.
Not because they didn't have the skill, because we have the most talented female workforce out there, most educated than we ever had in history right now. It's because that the rest of the world couldn't flex with the caregiving responsibilities and everything else that they had to shoulder during a pandemic, and wages did not pay them enough to be able to balance those two things out.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting. That is the next thought process for me when we talk about getting women back at work and lead and in positions, because as well as I know that once maybe a woman leaves that job, she cannot go back in at that same rate. If she's taken a year and a half off, she's taken 2 years off. But I think trying to find those opportunities and building those opportunities and reminding job creators and business owners of that value of someone who will invest and be like, look, I can be here 6 hours a day and I'm going to give you 10 hours of work.
Exactly.
But I need to be able to go and do other things at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. And being pregnant, having children is not a disability, right?
Yeah.
This is a part of who you are as a woman. You have every right to be able to do that and to be able to maintain your job and to be able to maintain a good job. And, furthermore, the other challenge with that is that the problem is that the majority of the middle wage jobs that we have and what we're finding are often male-oriented jobs.
Interesting.
So there is some intentionality that we really also have to do to make sure that these middle wage jobs are available for women and attractive to women.
Correct.
Right?
So when we look on the horizon, and I know that your work at Detroit Future City, it's always what's the next thing?
Yeah.
What is the next problem to solve, or really what's the next issue that we need to talk about? So where are you looking forward towards?
By the end of the summer, we want to be able to really go from middle wage jobs to high performing growth sector jobs. Okay, so we're starting the summer talking about what is the baseline. Middle wages are the baseline, and then we're going to get into who is actually working in these growth sector jobs that are swirling right now, and are African Americans and Latinos, women, are they included in the highest performing growth sectors in Southeast Michigan?
Well, I can't wait to see what's next. Anika Goss, the CEO of Detroit Future City. It's always good to have you here, and thanks for helping me start things off here at the Mackinac Policy Conference today.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy.
All right, and we are going to take you now to one of the first sessions of the day.